Welcome to Leadership Kung Fu with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
So welcome to Leadership Kung Fu. It's the podcast where leadership isn't about titles and trends or talk. It's about mastery. I'm your host, Sandi from Satori Consulting in Toronto. And I'm here with my co-host, Jen Long from Own Up in Colorado. Happy New Year, Jen.
Happy New Year, Sandi.
2026. Going to be a good year.
2026. Welcome back to your headphones.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So Jen and I, in our podcast, we break down the real moves that leaders really need to do to stay grounded, decisive, and effective in fast-changing world. And all of our clients and everything that we do, we know that things are changing fast. So, we're trying to give you no fluff, no hype, just some practical wisdom from insight that we've gleaned over the years, insight that we've got from our clients, and strategies that you can actually use. So leadership, like Kung Fu, is a learned practice. And so it's learned through awareness and discipline and knowing when to strike and when to yield and when to stand your ground. In each of our episodes, we explore the mindsets and the habits and the techniques that help leaders lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. So today, we decided that we were going to revisit a topic that we think is really important, which is strategy isn't a deck. We need to make it real. So we're going to chat about turning the document into a real measurable results and how that has to happen through how it cascades through the organization. And we have touched on this topic before for our loyal listeners, episode 61 and 63. We've touched on it, but it's such an important topic. It's January, so it's a perfect time to talk about it again. So here we are. So stay with us, take a breath, find your stance, and get ready to sharpen your strategic edge.
Here we go. It's strategy month. January is strategy month.
The heck with resolutions. It's all about strategy.
It's all about strategy. Yeah. And it's interesting because we always have these conversations, and this is the month that this shows up in the coaching conversation. This is the month that it kind of shows up because the strategies are coming out. They're coming out for people. They've spent time. Maybe they got them last year. Maybe they got them at the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody went on holiday. And now it's like, all right, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to operationalize this strategy?
Yeah.
And these are the stories, right? That I just had a conversation. I was telling Sandi before I put my headphones on about a director who'd been given the strategy, and they are meeting together as director peers, and they are frustrated and stymied about what to do with the strategy because they see a page. Well, it's not even a page, it's more pages because there's a lot of explanation around it, but a document with basically eight objectives, and they have no clarity on what's most important and who's got what, right? There's maybe some obviousness about it, but they're really like, we're trying to make this happen, but what does this mean for us? What are we doing with this? How do we, and so took it back to the senior team and said, we're struggling. So kudos to them for saying,
no kidding,
what to do with this.
Courage and leadership,
but found a little bit of resistance because the senior leaders were almost offended. Like, what do you mean you don't know what to do with this?
Mm-hmm.
And so their embarrassment was like, well, okay, I guess we'll just go figure it out, right? And I think that's a big problem, and that's more common than probably a lot of people want to admit to.
Right, and it's so common, and the fact that they sort of retreated. What are they going to do with it? You'll probably have that same conversation with this person in March because they're not moving it forward, right? Which is problematic. Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, hopefully we won't.
Hopefully won't be. Not for your coaching session. I'm sure they're fine now. But, we were talking too. So my example was, fairly recently where we had written a strategy. The strategy is fine. It's good. And we went to do an operational planning session with a couple layers down. And when you're operationalized, it's really, what choices are we going to make? We can't do everything. And they wouldn't let go of anything. Everything was a priority to them. And I kept saying, well, you can't do everything. So if you had to give something up, what would it be? I can't give anything up. Everything is a priority. And so that there is a problem, right? It's like
Yeah.
if you can't make choices, it's you're not being strategic. And wherever you are in that organization, whether you're operationalizing or not, it is about making strategy into choices, right? It's like,
Right.
what are we going to do and what are we not going to do? So
Right. And so this led us into, and we've talked about this. One of the most important questions as you're forming strategy is to get clear understanding about what it is you will say no to. Strategy, the whole point, right? If it's going to be real and it's going to be operational, that means you're going to start maybe doing some things, which also means you're going to stop doing some things.
Mhm.
You cannot top load strategic work on top of everyday work.
No,
It's not doing something in addition to the business.
it's exactly right. It is the business, right?
It's the business.
You've got a begin point and end point with your strategic plan. And in
Mm-hmm.
there, it's like, what road are we going to choose? So the strategy is the road that we've chosen. And what's the path that we're going to take to get there? And in that, making that decision of the path, you're making decisions not to take other paths. And
Right.
it's such an important conversation that the easy, what do we need to do more of or less of, or stop, start, continue. Those are
Mm-hmm.
super simple constructs
Mm-hmm.
to get people to start thinking about what it is that they're not going to do. So that makes
Mm-hmm.
room and space and capacity for what you are going to do. The things that are actually going to forward your strategy to the further, to make it better and lost for words.
Well, and I think part of the conversation, when we ask the question, what do we need to stop doing? What do we need to say no to, are easy questions to ask.
Mhm.
But in the conversation, do we create enough space for what are we afraid of if we say no?
Yeah.
What do we see as the implications of saying no, right? Follow the whole thread, because we're not really exploring the I can't say no to this and the limited participation in that conversation because people are holding back on, I'm not going to bring that up because I don't want to lose that budget. I don't want to lose those people. I don't want to lose, because they're making all kinds of judgments and assumptions about impacts of saying no. And the no conversation and the stop conversation is a much broader, deeper exploration of what if? What if we said no to this? What would happen if we did that? Right. So if we're going to do this, which means we might say no to this, let's explore this so we can see what that really looks like. And I think there's not enough time spent in all the things we could say no to and what would happen if we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That whole notion of scenario planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sort of takes the risk out a little bit, right? Because it's easier to go back to your boss to say, we've chosen to do this, but we've chosen not to do this. And these are the reasons, and these are the risks, and these are the implications. Like that is a real leadership way of looking at something from a holistic standpoint.
Right. It operationalizes the real critical thinking around what that is what's going to help you really find what's a real risk versus what's the story I'm telling myself.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what clears the air. And that's the conversation that you need to have as a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody in their divisions, part of why we can't operationalize strategy and say no is because everybody's holding on to their turf. Everybody's holding on to their thing that they think is important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so let's talk about making space and time to have these conversations, because it's not a 10-minute conversation in your calendar on the Monday morning. It's not a Kanban. It's a really well-designed, thoughtful time to have this conversation that has an agenda, that has the things that we need to discuss, all of that sort of thing, but making the time to make it happen in a really busy environment.
Yeah.
Right?
With the understanding we're going to make decisions.
Yes.
This isn't just let's explore and then go back to work. It's let's
Mhm.
make decisions about this.
Yes.
And I think that's also what we miss in our meeting agenda when A, we're going to meet about strategy, and B, that includes we're going to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is where the failure of operationalizing also shows up.
Right. And I also think the whole alignment piece in that, because nodding ahead does not actually mean alignment. right?
Yes.
People need to
Yes.
say, I agree, and,
Yes.
thumbs up or thumbs down or, that sort of thing, is some
Yeah.
kind of something that says that people are fully aligned and on board. Because
Yeah.
what you don't want to have happen is to spend the time doing this, and then people walk out and they have the water cooler talk after about, I really didn't agree with that, and I'm just going to do this over here, right? Because that's just
Right.
wasted time.
Right. Right. And the conversations are the big thing, right? The conversations um about this is when sometimes it feels like strategy is it's all art, it's all thinking, it's all, and it's like, no, a lot of it is the conversation, what you put on the table, and how forthcoming and open and transparent and challenging you are
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, because the conversations are over time what drive your ability to operationalize, because that's the alignment that you create. And alignment is an ongoing conversation. It happens at the beginning, it happens every quarter, it might be happening every month, because those conversations and those challenges and those questions are we still focused on this? Is it still working? What's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think these conversations can be held at every level, right? So the most
Yes.
senior should be having it with their team. The next layer down should be having it with their team. That team should be having it with their team. And so it's cascading throughout the organization. So there's the alignment on what are we doing, but there's alignment on, I understand what the strategy is, right? Because
Right.
understanding it means that you can have line of sight to what you personally do when you get down to even the lower levels of, what am I doing that is actually furthering where we need to be, that strategy. And I think that's really important. So ensuring from an accountability standpoint that these conversations are being had. And so I think senior leaders need to hold their leaders accountable for having the conversations and giving them the space and the grace to have those conversations.
Exactly. And another piece of being able to operationalize is in those very early conversations, when you go from the top to the next layer down, is that next layer down is responsible to make meaning of what that is for them. Not only should you be able to talk strategy, understand strategy, but you should also be able to articulate, here's what that means for us in this division. Here's what that means for us in this department. So that when you give it to your next your next level down, they've got sense of what it is for them, because their conversation is going to be more about, here's what it means, here's the strategy for us guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it gets very personalized to the people who are actually doing the strategic work.
Yes. Very granular from an operational level, right? Because let's face it, people need to do things with it. So the more you have conversations about what it actually means to them,
Mm-hmm.
the easier it's going to be to actually execute on.
Mm-hmm. And in the context of those conversations is when you're finding out how clear people are, right? To go back to the problem I was trying to solve before I got on the podcast, right? Is if you don't know, if you walk away unclear, that's on you.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
And
on
I
you.
applaud your client for actually having the courage to go back and say, I don't understand.
Yeah. What is this all important? Because if it's all important, there's no way we're getting it done.
That's right. Everything's important. Nothing's important. We say that all the time, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, sorry, no. Create focus for us, please.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay to ask for that. Because if they don't give it to you, next layer down is obligated to figure out what that is.
Yes.
Based on what you're giving me, here's what I see as the priority. Here's what I see is number one. How I'm interpreting that means this. Have I got that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the other piece of this is understanding that no department is in a silo, and should be
Correct.
having cross-functional discussions about, I'm doing this piece of this of what I'm doing here supports the strategy, but I know that you're doing part of it as well. And so let's talk about what you're doing and what we're doing, so that there's, I don't want to use the word alignment again, but there's an understanding of what everybody's doing. So there's not duplicative effort, so that, you all come with a cohesive group saying, these
Well, that your understanding isn't at odds with
yes.
someone else's understanding, and so the cross organizational strategic conversations, right, which happen mid-level, upper level. And are we doing aligned actions? Are there actions my division is taking that are impeding your ability to take actions to be strategic?
Yeah.
What are those? And if we've got that going on, what do we do? How do we solve that?
Mm-hmm.
The idea of aligned action across, because that helps those aligned actions refine and make easy to say no to things.
Right.
When you start to understand what aligned actions start to look like, then it becomes a lot easier to say, oh, well, here's a bunch of stuff we're spending time on that we don't need to do anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I was going to say, and jump in, I was getting excited there. They, your client courageously went up and said, we don't understand. It is sometimes, like, I think that's courageous. Absolutely. Sometimes it's more difficult to do it cross-functionally because it's a peer that you're saying it to, right? And that peer, again, you talk about that turf, and I don't want to let go. It could be seen as, somebody who wants to hone in on territory. So you have to be really careful about how you're raising it, the words that you're choosing, um, be curious about what they're doing, and really talk about it in terms of we need to be aligned, and use the language that people will not get defensive about.
Right. And the beauty of the strategic conversation is there is always a unifying objective. There is a place where you meet. And when the discussion gets difficult, you always retreat to the where here, if we're going to meet here, if we're going to meet this together, this is our opportunity, right? And so finding the mutuality to get to the aligned actions. And the other thing about saying no and stopping stuff, it's not forever.
No, for sure.
And
It's
I
just
think
not
that's
now.
the implication is like, what are we going to stop doing? Which, we're not going to do that anymore ever.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we're gonna stop doing that for the next 18 months.
Yeah.
Because we just don't. It's a capacity burner, and it's not going to help us solve the problem we need to do to move strategically.
Yes. Yeah.
And so taking into account that if it feels like you're losing power and influence because your resources are being diminished or reallocated, which are all some of the reasons people don't say no to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kingdom building. That takes part of my kingdom. But, all of those things come into play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where you got to start to understand, we're going to take this away from you, and it's not going to happen but it's only going to be for, year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get it back.
Well, I think the other thing on that is that the fact that strategies are usually, let's call it a minimum of 3 years, right? And so with the team that I was telling you about, what I ended up doing with them is saying, okay, you're not willing to give anything up, but what aren't you going to do in 2026? So that's not saying no, that's just like deferring, right? So different language, because it's a 3-year strategy. If you start out in January of 2026 trying to do absolutely everything, A, you'll burn out, but B, it doesn't make any sense because you have a 3-year strategy. So you need to be strategic on choosing when you're going to be doing things, right? And having those conversations with when is the right time.
Yeah. Because when you don't, the people who are making decisions on strategic action are low in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are having what my friends in chip holding call the knife fight. We're going to have a knife fight down here because you're not clear up here.
Right.
And so I'm fighting for this and they're fighting for that. And so we're fighting it out every day because there's no clarity and prioritization coming down our way.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're the ones who are making decisions.
Yeah. Rightly or wrongly.
Rightly or wrongly.
And probably not tied to strategy. It's just whatever comes their way, right? Well, sort of.
Tied to whatever is important that week.
Exactly.
Because we're just trying to get stuff done.
Yeah. That whole get stuff done. That's just a whole nother topic for another day. But for sure. So one of the things I think that we sort of talked in the outset is that you need to make space in your calendar for strategic conversations, whether you're having them with your team, whether you're having them cross-functionally, whether you're having them, up, whatever what it is. You need to make time in your calendar to make that you're having these conversations that are not operational. How are we doing it conversations, but what are we doing and why are we doing conversations?
Yeah. right? So it's not the slide deck, it's the calendar. It happens on the calendar. Have you created the space for the conversation, for the decision, for the discovery and reflection on, is it working? That all happens on the calendar
Yes. Yeah. So
by design. Yeah.
anybody who's listening right now, I want you to go back to your calendar right after this podcast and look to see what next week looks like, to see if you have
Yeah.
anything or the next month looks like, reflect
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. And one of the things about who owns names are attached to who does the strategic work.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That there is an owner of the work that gets done, manages the project, implements the thing, whatever that is, right? And through those people, where is the reflection and the understanding of success? If this is successful, what should we be seeing?
Mm. Yeah. What are the measurements for sure? Using the RACI template's a really good way to say who's accountable and who's responsible and who needs to be informed, that sort of thing. I think that's just an easy hit to say, and
Yeah.
also a good way when you're building out sort of tactical plans to say, where do we have too much overload on people that are responsible to get the work done? So it's really a good litmus test for that as well.
Yeah. Because the saying no thing goes all the way down. What are we taking off your plate when we're putting this on your plate?
That's right. That's right. So that's good. I think, yeah. What else are we on our strategy conversation? Talk about alignment.
Besides calendaring. Oh, just the when we talk about measuring, right? It's a metric. Creating metrics that are the right things for the problem you're solving, not the metrics that you typically use in the business. Do you know what I'm saying? If we're going to do successful strategy, right? What is the work that we're operationalizing, and how do we know that that work is successful? Are there existing things that we actually have, or do we need to new problem, new metric?
Right. Yeah.
And taking that into consideration, first of all, so that when you're in the moment of what are we learning, do we also calendar the learning team, the hot wash, the retrospective. Okay, we just came through this. How'd that go?
Yeah, postmortem it for sure.
Right? Did it do what we thought it would do? Is the strategy working meetings? Is how we're spending our time and effort actually proving out, and where do we need to pivot?
Yeah. But those go, I don't know about in your world, Jen, but in my world, I don't see those happening all that much because those they take time, right? And, I talked about it being a fast changing world. Everybody's moving forward at 100 miles per hour. So you're moving forward 100 miles per hour. You're not stopping to reflect. And I'm not, we're not saying you have to spend a lot of time in the rearview mirror, but what's the learning? What is the learning that you can take away from what you've just been through so that you can be better at what you want to do going forward? Right. So it's time well spent.
Right. And those quarterly strategy meetings are basically your retrospectives, your learning, your reflection on what are we seeing? What are we not seeing? What do we see as a red flag? How do we know it's a red flag? What do we want to do about the red flag? Right. Or no, it's all green. It's looking good. All right. Can we accelerate it? Can we widen it? Can we broaden it? Like,
yeah.
All those questions should be, and then decisions, and names.
Yes. Ownership for sure. Yeah. One of the things that sort of was thinking about it. So when strategy dies, when it doesn't get past the deck, one of the things is when we override it because there's pressures to do so, right? It's that, squirrel that comes across your desk and maybe you need to visit the squirrel. Maybe you do. Maybe it's the most important thing and you got to drop something else. But often you don't. And you need to stay the course. The other is so resurfacing the old priorities because that's what we're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right. So that's sort of to your point of, are we measuring the same things or do we need to measure differently because we're doing different things? asking for exceptions. I'm just going to work on this project just this once. And it may not be aligned with the strategy, but it might be a pet project, right? Again, we need to be able to be discerning.
Sounds good and it's sexy.
Yeah.
It's AI, but it's not AI that has anything to do with the strategy.
No, that's right. That's right. So, be really careful of those traps that you get in. And so, and the stories that you tell yourself, I think is the thing there, right? It's a priority, but is it really a priority? It might feel like it's a priority, but really have that conversation with yourself or with others.
The accountability conversation of what are you doing? And why
How
are you
you
doing
doing
that?
it?
Why are you making that decision? How is that, this is how it's going to impact, right? And that's the accountability conversation that absolutely has to happen as you watch your teammates, peers, subordinates make decisions. One decision can take you out of alignment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, if you're not having those conversations, you're not, constantly having those conversations, it could be months before you realize you're in misalignment, right? So it really is a constant flow of communication and effort around making the strategy successful, I think.
Yeah. And so when we say constant flow, it's a consistent cadence communication. That's why it's on the calendar.
That's right.
And it's not a single person. No one person owns strategy.
No, for sure. Yeah. So I think, when does it succeed? When you protect your time, you protect the focus. I think it's important. Holding the line on what you said you were going to do, unless, of course, something from left field, a black swan comes your way, then, we need to pivot. But for the most part, you want to stay the course and pivot when it makes sense and necessary, not because it is the new flavor of the day, I guess.
Well, and have the courage, right? When you are, some strategic work is experimental. Some strategic work is testing out things you haven't tried before. And leaders are just the worst at giving it enough runtime to see if it's actually successful. If they don't get immediate impact, what are you guys doing? This was a dumb idea. Let's not do that. Right? Really, when you're creating metric and we're creating evaluation, to be sensible about how much time things will take. And the bigger your organization is, right, the longer that's going to be. And when your boss is living quarter to quarter, that can create a lot of pressure. So understand that the time bounding in sticking to it, and how long is long enough to know before you need to make a decision about something else if it doesn't work.
Right. Well, the whole adage of fail fast, right? And I have many conversations about that line because a lot of people are like, I don't think failure is an option, or I don't want to fail at anything. And what is fast failure? But the whole premise of it is, if you're trying something, if you are constantly in the flow of talking about it and it's not working, it's okay to say no to it. It's okay to move on to something else and try something. But allow space for trying things as long as it aligns with the strategy. But know that if it's not working, you need to cut ties. So
don't be afraid. Again, once you get good at stopping, all this kind of stuff starts to get a little bit easier. If you can start at the beginning with stopping, when you start the experiment, how you tamp that down gets a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Clarity equals commitment. One of the words we use a lot is around clarity. And if people are clear, and again, it's not the nodding, it's the I understand, then you can have commitment from people, right? And there's a line from your book around that, isn't that, Jen? I think you're like close to that one.
Well, there's the whole line around, I don't need you to agree, I need you to commit. And commitment comes in decisions and behaviors.
Yes.
Right? I'm making decisions to do the things, I'm behaving in the way that is expected based on what I've committed to. It's when I nod my head and I'm like, yeah. And then I go back and do all the things that I always do. No.
Yeah.
That is not commitment.
No, for sure. I think also, when there's approval, so alignment and commitment are crossing clarity, then you can start to execute, right? Because people know what they need to do. They can go back to their cubicles and actually make it happen. But all of these things have to be in place in order for that to happen. So they're not sitting there spinning their wheels or reverting back.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's levels of people's understanding of when they're in this, right? Of I'm aware of what the strategy is. I can talk about what the strategy is. I can advocate for what the strategy is. But at what point do I become an active participant?
Mm-hmm.
At what point do I become a driver, right? Who's really driving? Who's actively participating and who really just needs to advocate, right? And where are people in that? Operationalizing has very much to do with, as this moves down the organization, what does it mean for me, and what am I doing, and what am I doing differently, and when am I doing it?
Yeah. 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 I think if you put a kung fu lens on it, strategy doesn't change decisions. If it doesn't change decisions, it isn't strategy. It's just storytelling.
Yeah.
So really think about what that is, right? So if it's not making you change and making you think differently and do things differently, then you're just telling yourself the same story for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And so hopefully this is helping you understand the slide deck is the least important thing.
Yes.
The slide deck is the executive summary of a lot of conversation, a lot of clarity, a lot of challenge, but that is just the what is it? The ignition, right? It's the fuel
Let it
for
flow.
the next conversation that happens, and all of it has to be meaning making and action taking and decision making. And where does that live? And are we scheduled to do it? And have we made decisions that allow that schedule to live?
Yeah. Yeah. So what are our top 5 takeaways? Strategy lives
What
in the
are our top
calendar.
5 takeaways? You wrote it down. Tell them. What is
Yeah.
it?
Strategy lives in the calendar, right? Do the work, talk about it separately. You have operational meetings, you have strategy meetings. Don't intertwine the two of them if you can avoid it.
Right.
Those ongoing conversations, up, down, sideways, that's what creates alignment. That's what breaks down the silos for people to hold on to their turf, right? So have the conversations. Right. Find out what
And
others are
some of
doing.
those conversations are holding people accountable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
And I think the other thing is you can hold people accountable that are not reporting to you, right?
Yes.
If they're part of something that needs to get done and you're a piece and they're a piece, but they're a peer, you can hold them accountable. Don't be afraid to have those respectful conversations about what needs to get done and who's doing it and why isn't it working and things like that.
Yeah. My expectation is that you and I were doing this together, and this is the thing, and this is the deadline we were going to make, and these are the actions we were going to take. And I'm concerned because I don't see you making any of those decisions or taking any of those actions. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, exactly. Postmortem, reflection, lean into the measurement. That's such an important aspect of strategy, of anything really, right?
Anything of any
Reflecting on
endeavor.
what we've
Yeah.
done is
If you're operationalizing it, what are you measuring? How do you know it works?
yeah, that's right. And what did we learn? What else?
Those are the big ones.
I think they're the big ones.
Those are
Yeah.
the big ones.
Yeah.
So I have some actions. I have some actions for you the listener, take these away, right? So one thing you can go do is block one recurring strategy hour on your calendar.
Beautiful.
Go block that. And it can be alone by yourself to do the thinking, or it can be with others to have the conversation. Maybe it needs to be both. Have one explicit translation conversation with your team.
I love it.
Here's our strategy. Here's what that actually means for us this quarter.
And I would
understand things can shift.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I would add to that and open it up for questions, right? Making sure that they understand. So we're not telling, we're engaging.
Right, because if you're sense making with them, are you connected? Did it make sense? What did they hear? What does that mean to them? How do they translate that into their job? And how do you know that's going to work, right? So that's conversation is dialogue.
Yes, indeed.
Do a thought alignment check with your peers. Ask, what do you think is actually the most important thing we're doing this year? And compare your answers.
Wow.
Right. And so that episode with the client I had right before the podcast is because they got together as a peer team and compared their understanding, is how they got brave enough to push back and go, this makes no sense.
Right. Yeah. I love it.
So do it. And then audit your meeting, right? Convert it from pure status to at least 50% decision-making, problem solving around strategic priorities. We all love a good status meeting.
We do. We do. And there's just such a waste of time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So those are the things those are your go-dos. Try those.
Yeah. I think that's a great start for 2026. Let us know how it works. Give us some feedback. We'd like to know how your meetings are going and how your alignment is happening in your organizations. And if any of the things that we're offering from our insight are actually helping you.
Yeah.
Creating
Yeah.
clarity.
Notice, is this kind of stuff showing up in your conversations with people? Right? Are we even talking about strategy, or did we all just go to the meeting and then we're back to the status meeting?
Yeah. Or just back to adjusting whatever the hell we were doing before.
All right. This is your kung fu moment. Go forth, practice, create discipline. We're anxious to hear how it goes for you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. And we will be talking to you next month.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Sandy. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandy's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI Consulting INC.ca. And you can check out Jen's website at accountabilityatwork.com. If you like what you hear, let us know by leaving a review on your favorite listening platform. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.